Today we're going to talk about autolyzing, and we're going to show you the whole process so you know as a beginner what it's like. Sourdough making is full of these complex terminologies and things that just sound scary, so we're going to talk today about autolyzing. Autolyzing sounds like a huge word, and all it really means is mixing the flour with the water. Now there's different types of autolyzing, but we're just going to deal with this one. So what is autolyzing in sourdough baking? Autolyzing is a crucial step in sourdough baking that involves allowing the flour and water to hydrate, that means mix them together, and rest before the addition of salt, the starter, and further mixing. And this process enhances gluten development and contributes to a better textured and flavoured bread. So let's talk about autolyzing in sourdough. So I'm going to give you an explanation of autolyzing in sourdough baking and some of the different methods you can use. So we talk about hydration of the flour. Autolyzing begins by combining the flour and water together in a mixing bowl. The goal is to ensure that all the flour particles are evenly hydrated, meaning equally wet. This initial hydration allows enzymes naturally present in the flour to start breaking down complex starches into simple sugars and proteins into amino acids. After mixing the flour and water, the dough is left to rest for a specific duration, typically ranging from 20 minutes to a few hours, and you can play around with this to find out for yourself. During this resting period, gluten formation begins and the dough structure develops. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of autolyzing. Improved gluten development. Autolysis allows gluten, the protein network responsible for the dough structure, to develop more effectively. This results in a better textured bread with good elasticity. What about enzyme activity? Enzymes present in the flour become active during autolysis, breaking down complex compounds into simpler ones. The enzymatic activity contributes to a better flavour development in the bread. Another good reason, it's just easier. It's just easier to work with autolyzed dough. You can forget all the explanations and scientific parts of it and just remember that it's easier to work with autolyzed dough. So now let's talk about different variations of autolyzing. There's different ways of autolyzing. What you're seeing here is the classic autolyze. This method involves combining only flour and water initially, and once the autolyze period is complete, the resting period, salt is added and the starter, and the dough is kneaded further or folded. This approach allows for optimal gluten development. Method number 2 is Levain autolysis. In this variation, a portion of the sourdough starter levain is included in the autolysis stage along with flour and water. This introduces the natural yeast and acids from the starter early in the process, enhancing flavour complexity to get a more sourdough flavoured sourdough. And when we talk about a portion, we're just talking a percentage of. So you may say, oh, I want it slightly more tangy, so I'm going to add a 10% of what I'm going to add in the starter later. So say 50 grams, you're going to add 5 grams to the Levain autolysis, and that will give it a slightly enhanced flavour. Whereas if you want to have a more sourdoughy flavour, you may want to put in 20 grams from a 50 gram starter. Salted autolysis. Some bakers prefer adding salt to the autolysis stage. While traditional autolyzers avoid salt initially, adding it during autolysis can help to better control the overall fermentation process and enzymatic activity. Cold autolysis. This method involves placing the autolyzed mixture in the refrigerator during the resting period. Cold autolysis slows down enzymatic activity and fermentation, providing the baker with more flexibility in their schedule. Then there's extended autolysis. Extend the autolysis period beyond the typical time frame, sometimes up to 24 hours, can lead to improved dough extensibility, the stretching ability, and flavour development. This method is suitable for those who prefer a longer, slower fermentation process. You can experiment with different autolysis methods, allowing you to customize your sourdough process and achieve specific characteristics in your final loaf, such as texture, flavor, and crust development, and therefore giving you a lot of choice. But the important things to remember is autolysis, when you see it, is just mixing the flour with the water and then leaving it for a short period of time. So don't get scared of that term. And the other thing is that sourdough is more of a learning process, and it's a joyful learning process. You can change the flavour of what you're creating at the end result very easily by changing your autolysis timing or even the type of autolysis you're going to use. And that means that you can really specifically get that homemade bread feel that you really want, and that your children, your children's children, and people around you recognise as, oh, that's your loaf. Well, bakers, don't get concerned about autolysis. Just remember to mix the flour with the water and then let it rest for as low as 20 minutes or up to a few hours, and then you'll be good to go.